There is an awakening going on, but all of the studies are already out there. The science is out there. It's all out there. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. All of these studies have been done before. Even in recent, actually, in fact, there's a whole field of science and therapy called intermittent hypoxic training, or IHHT, intermittent hypoxic training, okay, or therapy. And what this is they use machines where you breathe in higher than normal oxygen for a period, and then you breathe in very low oxygen. Mm-hmm. So it's like holding your breath, right? But you're breathing very low oxygen. And what it does is it simulates going up to high altitude. What they found was that people go to high altitude and come back down, they feel benefits, they feel better. This is because they're holding their breath for a short period of time. It's like holding their breath for a short period of time. It's like lowering the oxygen for a period. And what that does, that climatization, which we can invoke with our breath, but they do it through machines, but then mountaineers do it through climbing up mountains. What it does is it makes your body go, oh, I'm running out of oxygen, so I need to prepare. So what it does is it produces more red blood cells, it produces better capillarization and blood circulation. And what it also does is it increases blood flow to organs that need more oxygen, like the brain and the heart. And because of that, then you become more adapted to oxygen. So you need less oxygen. And that means the less you need to breathe, the longer you live, the better your health.
From the Weston A. Price Foundation, welcome to the Wise Traditions podcast for wise traditions in food, farming, and the healing arts. We are your source for scientific knowledge and traditional wisdom to help you achieve optimal health.
Hey, Hilda here. Do you ever play around with your breath? Try to hold it when you're driving through a tunnel, for example, or deliberately slow it down to relieve stress? Learning to train our bodies to breathe differently can enhance mental and physical health and may even serve to extend our lives. This is episode 367, and our guest today is Niraj Naik, a holistic wellness expert, author, founder of the Renegade Pharmacist blog, and SOMA Breath instructor. Today, Niraj gives us an overview of how breathing impacts our entire body and how mindful breathing can help heal all of our systems. He explains what happens in the body and the brain over the long term with a committed breathwork practice. And he goes over an easy exercise to assess where we are as a starting point. And he also offers tips for how to begin breath training for all of the benefits it holds. Before we jump into the conversation, I want to let you know, here at the Foundation, Hablamos Español. Did you know that WAPF has all kinds of resources in Spanish? Go to westonaprice.org and find the WAPF in Español section. Just click on the green button on the right-hand side of the screen. And you can find brochures, articles, videos, and more, all in Spanish. Also note that we're on Instagram at westonaprice_Español and on Facebook too. Plus, our Spanish podcast, Tradiciones Sabias, just launched its second season. Find it wherever you get your podcasts. Feel free to share these resources with friends who speak Spanish or use them to polish your own language skills. Gracias, amigo. Redmond Real Salt. Have you heard about the salt that has 60 plus healthy trace minerals that are naturally found in a one-of-a-kind salt deposit in Utah? This salt has a delicious, subtly sweet taste thanks to its mineral content that also gives it unique health benefits as well. Redmond Real Salt comes from an ancient underground salt deposit, which makes it a kind of ancient sea salt. And this ancient sea salt has a lot of advantages over its modern counterparts. First off, it's protected from modern pollutants like microplastics by layers of volcanic ash and clay. And also, Redmond salt is just the way nature made it long ago. It doesn't have popular modern-day additives like dextrose, which is sugar, anti-caking agents, or iodine. It's naturally yummy the way salt was meant to be savored. Go to redmond.life and check them out. That's redmond.life and use the code word WISE for 15% off at checkout. redmond.life and the code word WISE for 15% off. This is Holistic Hilda, and you're listening to Wise Traditions. Welcome to Wise Traditions, Niraj.
Absolute pleasure to be here, Hilda. Fantastic.
I can't wait to hear some stories of how breath can transform our health. Can you just tell us one here at the top?
Sure. Actually, just yesterday, and we get like one of these at least every day. One of our instructors, recent instructors, because we train SOMA Breath instructors to use these techniques, not just for themselves, but other people as well. And one amazing lady just posted, Claire Williamson. She says, just wanted to say a massive thank you to you, Niraj Naik. I am a SOMA Breath instructor. I only discovered SOMA in the last quarter of last year, and has changed everything for me. I'm a recovered survivor. I think there's a hashtag recovered survivor. I think there must be a popular hashtag because it's about chronic anxiety. She says, I battled chronic anxiety for 14 years. So finding my freedom to breathe has been amazing. And she has doubled her business income and impact in the time she has been consciously breathing with us too. So that's fantastic. I love it. I love getting results like that.
And it's not a unique testimonial in that you get dozens and dozens, don't you? If not thousands, I imagine.
Oh yeah, we've had countless amount. It's hard to go through them all because we saved them all, but it's just like pages. It's been astonishing.
And so how can breath be so transformative? And what is the role of intentional breathing for improved health?
This is a huge topic in itself. Like I can do a very long, elaborate explanation or condense it down, but I try and make it as simple as possible. So, well, if you think about this, right? How long can you go without food?
A few months. Mm-hmm.
How long can you go without water?
A few days, yeah.
Days, right? A week. But how long can you go without breathing? Minutes, right? Some people have hacked it to go several minutes, but really, like, it's the most important thing for us to live and survive and exist. However, it's probably the least looked at until recently. Now everyone's worried about their breathing because of this coronavirus situation for the first time, But it's something that we didn't pay much attention to. And it's interesting, I wonder why, because I really believe, and has worked for me, that by understanding the breath and how breathing affects our physiology, we can improve every area of our life, every aspect of our life. And if you're suffering from a disease, you can actually use breath control techniques to solve that. But you can also then use it to elevate your life, to amplify it, to create more energy, more productivity, to have more fun and improve your mood and all of these things.
And that's not hyperbole. It sounds so amazing. It almost sounds like it defies belief.
I know. So let me try and make it as easy to understand as possible. So I'm going to try and paint a few analogies. So somehow the ancient yogis figured out that the rate of your breath, how fast you breathe, and how long you can hold your breath correlates to longevity. Okay. Now, the ancient school of breathing practices and energy moving practice, to be more specific, is Pranayama, which comes from the Yogic tradition. And it's one of the most important parts of the yogic practice, but it's, again, one of the least understood. So they somehow knew, I don't know how, but they understood that breathing is the way we produce energy in the body, and that everything that exists is energy. You are just a matrix of different types of energy, forms of energy, right? So through breath, we produce energy in the mitochondria, right? And they're like the battery packs of the cells, and that is basically what drives life, the function of life. But what they realize is that through the rate of breath and your ability to hold your breath relates to longevity, but by studying animals. Because if you look at animals in nature, animals that live a very long time, elephants and turtles, they're very slow breathing patterns. They breathe at like 1 to 2 breaths a minute, right? But they also, if you look at the whale, for example, the whale can hold its breath for 2 hours at a time, the bowhead whale, and lives 200 years plus, right? So it's got this incredible ability to retain its breath. Now, if you look at the opposite end of the spectrum, the animals that don't live a long time, like rats and mice, they live like 1 year or 2 years max, right? And they breathe at like 150 breaths per minute to 200 breaths per minute, really fast. Okay, now there's a weird, strange anomaly to this, and that is the naked mole rat. Naked mole rats are rats, but what makes them different is that they live up to 30 years, pretty much free of disease. And the unique thing with them is that they live primarily underground in a hypoxic, which is a low oxygen environment, and they can hold their breath for 18 minutes at a time, right? So there is a relationship here in the animal world between breath retention times and breath rates. So slower you breathe, the longer you can hold your breath, the longer you live. And humans, remember, we have the conscious ability to control our breath. We can either be like rats and mice, we can be like naked mole rats or whales, right? We can choose how we breathe.
Fascinating. And maybe one way to look at it is our lives are measured by how many breaths we take. And if we use them all up, then our lives are going to be shorter, right?
Yes. So Swami Sivananda talks about this. He says that actually, we measure our age by our number of breaths that we take. So if you want to live less than 70 years, breathe faster than 15, 20 breaths a minute. If you want to live 80 years, breathe less than 15 breaths, around 10 breaths a minute. If you want to live to your peak of your optimum age, then breathe less than 10 breaths a minute.
But like you said earlier, Niraj, we're hardly paying any attention to our breath at all, honestly. I know we have steady, slow breathing while we're sleeping, thank goodness. So a third of our lives, it's kind of controlled by the autonomic nervous system. But the rest of the time, we're just breathing regularly and not giving it a second thought.
Yeah, actually, sleep is an interesting thing because we sometimes breathe quite fast, sometimes we hold our breath, and we have a little bit of apnea every night. We hold our breath for certain periods of time, and you breathe fast and then you hold your breath. You do that for many times throughout your sleep. So especially during rapid eyeball movement, you breathe much faster. Sleep is a very interesting situation. But you're right, our autonomic nervous system, which is controlled by the reptilian brain, is basically the part of the brain, the brainstem that deals with our sense of awareness and survival and what we perceive as a threat in the environment. So the reptilian brain can make us breathe faster than we need to and also slow our breathing rate down. But it tends to get triggered by fear and therefore make us hyperventilate and make us prepare for battle. Now, that means that we overbreathe and we hyperventilate. And hyperventilation is shown, by studies and clinical practice to be really harmful for health. Okay, we all know that. However, so going back to slow breathing and holding breath, right, that seems like counterintuitive because we're told over and over again, oh, you need to deep breathe. You're not breathing enough. You should breathe more, breathe harder. It's all a myth. It's not true. Okay. And so this correlation argument, which I'm talking about, which is you live longer if you breathe less and can hold your breath for longer, is not good enough if there's no mechanism to explain why does that work. So now I'm going to attempt to explain why slow breathing and breath retention, holding your breath, the ability to hold your breath, corresponds to longer life, a healthier life. Okay, because unless you understand the mechanism, you're not going to believe really what I say. Okay, you want to understand why and how it works. Okay, so basically, when we breathe in oxygen, and that oxygen comes into our red blood cells, okay, through our lungs, and we get oxygenated. All right, and then the red blood cells transports that oxygen to where it's needed in the body. Now, when we imagine every single cell in our body breathes, is breathing in oxygen, breathing out carbon dioxide. So our body has this amazing mechanism of knowing where to drop off oxygen. Okay. So otherwise, if it doesn't have this mechanism, it will just be very inefficient and it will just drop off oxygen everywhere and would have to breathe really hard. All right. So, but it's very clever because it knows not to drop off oxygen to certain areas, but knows exactly where to drop off the oxygen because the cells that breathe more, because you're using them more, the more active cells, like say you're doing dumbbells, exercises like this, right? Your cells are producing more carbon dioxide in that area and has more higher demand for oxygen. It's the carbon dioxide that tells your blood cells where to drop off the oxygen. And the higher the carbon dioxide levels in those areas, that's where your blood drops off the oxygen. All right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is the mechanism of getting oxygen from red blood cells into the tissue cell, which is your muscle cells, your organ cells, basically the tissue cells, everything that's not your blood cells. Okay? Now, this is super important because disease and just poor health and just life itself won't exist if you don't get the oxygen off your red blood cells and into the tissue cells. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So disease is caused by poor, low body oxygenation. Okay? Now, we have an abundance of oxygen. When we breathe in just a little bit, like that, a little sniff, your blood is fully saturated oxygen. Getting the oxygen into your blood is not a problem at all. All right? That's not the issue. The issue that people have is getting it from the red blood cells into the body tissue cells. The reason why is because people quite often hyperventilate unconsciously. And the reason why is because they're not consciously breathing, taking control of the breath, because the reptilian brain is the unconscious part of the brain. It's what runs on autopilot. We operates in the background and allows us to have a conscious experience of life because it does all of the complicated tasks like your heart rate, your digestion, your immune system, and your breathing. It does it on autopilot. But the breath is the one thing that we can consciously control from the autonomic nervous system. And because of that, we can actually control the autonomic nervous system through breath. That's the magic.
And that's a beautiful thing. But I'm going back to what you said a moment ago, that we hyperventilate without even being aware of it.
Yes.
Is that like when we're anxious, or like what would be the situations that would cause us to hyperventilate?
Yes, exactly. So when we perceive a threat in our environment, we go into fight-flight mode. And that fight-flight mode makes us have a bigger demand for oxygen. We feel like we need more oxygen, okay, unconsciously. So we start to breathe faster. If you see somebody who's panicking, they tend to hyperventilate. And we generally have this like underlying like anxiety. Everybody has this born actually with a little sense of anxiety because we're on this planet and it's like, whoa, everything's like kind of a little bit crazy, right? Chaotic. So we're looking for safety. And if you don't find that safety, you panic more unconsciously and you start to breathe faster than you need to. And there's other things that influence our breath rate, which is like your food, your diet. If you eat heavy meals, you overeat. Your digestion is really, really taking a big toll and it needs more oxygen. So then you tend to breathe faster when you consume too much food. If you eat smaller portions, the hyperventilation isn't such an issue. If you eat very processed, heavy foods that aren't easy to digest, you hyperventilate more because your oxygen demand goes up. And then what also causes it is like if you're not exercising, poor fitness, your demand for oxygen goes up because you're not efficient at using the oxygen. So there's all these other things, prescription medications, recreational drugs, coffee, stimulants, all of this stuff can make you breathe faster than you need to. All right. Now, here's the thing. What we're like, a lot like actually, and I like to use this analogy, it's easy to understand, is that we're kind of like cars in a way. We're like super efficient, powerful combustion engines. So if you imagine inside every single one of your cells, there is this battery pack called the mitochondria. There's 1,000 of them plus in every cell, which is what drives our life. Okay. Now, they are like little mini combustion engines. Okay. And they're constantly creating this inner fire, right? And producing byproducts of combustion, of this respiration process, which is turning oxygen into burning it with our fuel of glucose, which is our fuel source, into carbon dioxide and ATP energy. That's the function of life. Now, just like a normal car, like if you use that car and you drive it really hard and that car isn't efficient at using the gas, you're going to guzzle the gas, and you're going to also cause wear and tear on the engine.
Mm-hmm.
So that's like the free radical damage that you get from burning oxygen, right? So just like a real fire as well, you need the oxygen to make the fire burn, but too much oxygen makes the fire burn too bright. And if you're not efficient using oxygen, then that fire burns way too bright, too much, and you get this more wear and tear going on, the free radical damage. So oxidation is the issue of oxygen. And Helmut Sees, he's basically the father of redox chemistry. So this is the science of the role of oxygen and how oxygen reacts with things in the body. And he said, although it's very difficult to live without oxygen, it's also very difficult to live with oxygen because of oxidative stress. It's why we need antioxidants in our diet. So if you look at the ancient yogic system, it's like a complete science and methodology. If you do it the real way, the traditional yoga, not this mainstream yoga, which is completely different. If you do the traditional yoga, which is all about holding each pose for maximum effort, using breath control techniques, the entire system is designed to make you very efficient at using oxygen. So you need the least amount of oxygen to create the same amount of energy.
Okay, so I'm connecting the dots. And the idea is when we get just the right amount of oxygen, our mitochondria can function better. And that means everything in our body is going to function better, from improved cognitive function to an improved mood to more strength, because you're like a race car burning just the right amount of fuel. Is that right?
Kind of, yes, because we haven't had a manual on how to breathe. We've become like one of those old models of cars that has this old engine that isn't efficient, that guzzles loads of gas, causes a lot of wear and tear, and breaks down all the time, right? So you have to keep going to the mechanic. And often we're also putting the wrong fuel into the engine. Like we're using the wrong fuel. We're probably putting diesel into a petrol engine and things like that. And it's messing up the engine.
Mm-hmm.
But what we want to be like is those finely tuned, super efficient engines, which needs the least amount of gas to drive and get to A to B efficiently. That means you have less wear and tear and the engine runs forever and ever without breaking down. That's what we want to train ourselves to be. So the least amount of oxygen we need to produce the same amount of energy is what we want. That way we have less wear and tear on the system. Does that make sense?
Yes, and is resonating with me because I interviewed James Nestor, the author of Breath, The New Science of a Lost Art, and he was talking about something very akin to what you're talking about. But the challenge is, like, I've tried to run just doing nasal breathing and, if in effect, taking in less oxygen and trying to operate on less oxygen. It's really hard.
Yes, it's difficult because we have to repattern our entire physiology. And it's like, if we were taught this from a young age, we wouldn't be worrying about it so much now. It wouldn't be such a stress and struggle. But it takes a little bit of effort. And so there is a system from yoga, right, which I've now put together with SOMA Breath, which can be fun, can be accessible, and makes the whole process easier. And it revolves around certain special breathing practices from Pranayama, which means you train your cells to become very efficient, the mitochondria become very efficient using oxygen. It only takes like 10 minutes, 15 minutes a day of practice to get some results. But, the more you do, the deeper the practice you do, the more profound the results are going to be. But really, with just 20 minutes, you can make some big changes.
So maybe the reason I've been struggling is because I haven't really been training. I just expect my body to respond to this new approach.
Yes. If you can train yourself, you'll find that the nasal breathing isn't a problem, right? You'll be able to run just breathing through your nose. With your nose, you have much smaller volume of air going in and out. And also with your nose, you produce nitric oxide. And nitric oxide and carbon dioxide work together to get oxygen from your red blood cells into your body tissue cells. Nitric oxide also acts as antiviral, antimicrobial, and nasal breathing also filters the air and allows better oxygenation through the lungs and stuff.
So I know you can't, Niraj, I know you can't take us through the whole SOMA breathing technique. It's quite a process, but can you give us some ideas on how we can train so that we can run more efficiently?
Yes, definitely. So one of the easiest things to do is just go on YouTube, type in SOMA Breath daily dose, and try out one of our breath-based meditations. So this is actually a two-in-one technique because it can help with your mental health, with your well-being, your mood. Can also be used and your physical health, but actually it's a three-in-one because it helps with your mental health, your physical health, but also you can use it as a way to reprogram the brain, the mind, to go after your goals, or you can use it to actually get rid of habits that you don't want or manifest things better, things like that. So it's an amazing experience.
And I noticed that some of your meditations include music.
Yeah.
How does that enhance healing?
Yes. So one of the techniques, so we have several, we have many of them, but one of the techniques, which is our daily dose, you rhythmically in a perfect harmonic breathing pattern. When you breathe in a harmonic breathing pattern where your breathing rate and your breath time on your inhale and your exhale are congruent, what happens is you create this harmonic coherence in your physiology because your breath is so intimately linked to your autonomic nervous system. When you breathe in, your sympathetic nervous system goes up. When you breathe out, parasympathetic switches on. So we're constantly stimulating sympathetic and stimulating parasympathetic when we breathe in and out. When you breathe in a perfect rhythm, it brings balance to that nervous system. But you can also breathe out twice the length of time as you breathe in. When you double your exhale time, you switch on the parasympathetic. So we have breathing patterns where you have double the exhale time. So you're breathing out for 8 seconds, in for 4 seconds. And what that does, it actually creates this harmony in your physiology, but it also switches on the parasympathetic. And what it does is it helps you really relax. And it's a perfect state for you to self-heal, but also get oxygen flooding into your cells. So you do several minutes of this harmonic breathing. So breathing in for 4, out for 8, for example, or in for 2, out for 4, for several minutes. What that does, you start to breathe out all the carbon dioxide out of your system. Okay, and carbon dioxide is what tells your blood where to drop off the oxygen, right, as we said before. Mm-hmm. Now, what that means is then, as the carbon dioxide also tells your brain when to inhale. So the level of carbon dioxide in your system is what tells your brain that you need to inhale. The higher carbon dioxide, at a certain point, it will reach and you'll need to inhale. But what happens is when you breathe out all the carbon dioxide, you actually can hold your breath much longer than you normally can because you don't have as much carbon dioxide. So what that does is that when you hold your breath, so you do several minutes of rhythmic breathing and then you hold your breath after the exhale. When you hold your breath after the exhale, okay, it's like pressing pause on your life. When you breathe out, you expire. It's the last thing you do when you die, right? And you press pause on your breath because your thoughts are produced by inspiration. Inspire. Ah. When you inspire, you breathe in. It's an inhalation. But when you hold your breath on the exhale for a long enough period, you shut down the brain activity completely, especially the ego mind, the monkey mind. Mm-hmm. And this allows the thought files to re-pattern. And it can also allow you to consciously send affirmations to your unconscious mind. And this is a great way to form new habits and create better behaviors and patterns as well. It's amazing. Yeah. It's a meditation.
I've heard you say that we can tap into our intuition. And I think this is what you're saying. It kind of opens us up and opens up new possibilities for our minds to operate differently and our spirits.
That's correct. And then when you get to around 90 seconds of holding your breath, that's when you start to release the soma from within. The soma from within is like the tryptamines, the DMT that we have inside within. But this is something that brings a lot of good feelings. It makes you feel very euphoric and connected to everything. And it can actually be a powerful healer in itself. But around that 90-minute mark and beyond, you also wake up stem cells out of circulation. Stem cells don't like oxygen, and stem cells are cells that can turn into any other cell in the body, and they go to areas where there's inflammation and help healing, right? Also, what happens is because your carbon dioxide levels rise a lot, you create vasodilation, and all your blood vessels dilate. You get better blood flow all over your body, especially in your heart. You get new capillaries being formed in your heart. You get better circulation in your heart, but you also get better circulation in your brain. You can even wake up dormant parts of the mind when you do this practice for long enough. And when you get to deeper and deeper breath retention times, you get really good blood flow in your brain, and your brain strengthens and comes alive, and you wake up dormant parts of the mind. So you can actually use this to improve your cognitive function, in memory, and many other things like that. You can form new abilities and things like this.
Coming up, we'll hear more about the science behind breathwork and the physiological processes in our bodies and minds. Plus, Niraj will give us some practices that we can start at home right away.
You're listening to the Wise Traditions podcast from the Weston A. Price Foundation. We pause now to recognize our sponsors.
Earth runners. Our ancestors were virtually always grounded. They went around barefoot or wearing leather-soled moccasins or sandals, which kept them in touch with the earth. Our modern shoes, unfortunately, do quite the opposite. They keep us insulated, literally disconnecting us from the earth. It's time to get back to that connection with the earth to help restore our natural electric state for balance and better health. This is one of the reasons I love my Earth Runners sandals. They feature a copper earthing plug and conductive laces that keep me grounded, literally to the earth. I have several pair because they're just so comfortable and I'm addicted to the feeling, to be honest. Earth Runners have created minimalist earthing sandals to support a more barefoot experience, both physically and electrically. Their sandals are based on the huarache, which is an ancient design for footwear. It's basically a sole with a wrapping lace, and they've revamped it with Vibram soles and earthing technology. So basically, you get the most minimalist, natural, and grounded shoe experience you've ever had. So go for it. Restore your natural connection with the earth using Earth Runners. Plus, their minimalist sole allows for healthy, full range of foot movement. Rewild and reconnect with Earth Runners. Go to earthrunners.com and use the code WISE for 10% off. That's earthrunners.com and the code word WISE for 10% off at checkout. And Optimal Carnivore. Optimal Carnivore has just released Brain Nourish, the ultimate whole food nootropic supplement to help build a better brain. They have combined beef brain and lion's mane powder in a groundbreaking formula. These two ancestral superfoods have been used for centuries as a nootropic to improve brain function and overall mental well-being. And they're now available for the first time together in convenient capsules. This unique combination of powerful ancient superfoods makes for the perfect brain supplement. It provides your brain with a host of short and long-term benefits. Each serving has 1,500 milligrams of organic lion's mane mushroom and 1,500 milligrams of beef brain. Optimal Carnivore only uses 100% real mushrooms, by the way, organic fruiting bodies, which are rigorously tested for active compounds. And their beef brain is sourced from the highest quality regenerative farms in New Zealand. Keep in mind that all of Optimal Carnivore's products are 100% free of hormones, pesticides, antibiotics, and GMOs. So order yours today at amazon.com/optimalcarnivore and use the code WESTON10 to save 10% on all products. Oh, and a side note, Optimal Carnivore also plants one tree for every product sold, which helps the environment. Again, that's amazon.com/optimalcarnivore and the code WESTON10 to save 10% on all products. This is Holistic Hilda, and you're listening to Wise Traditions. So do people in the conventional medicine circles have an understanding about this? I feel like there is a growing understanding among the general populace, but, do regular doctors see this as a healing therapy of any sort?
Well, you'd be amazed how little doctors are trained in respiratory science. And I've spoken to directors of hospitals who have no clue about this stuff, and they're learning it for the first time. The best doctor who brought a lot of awareness to this is Dr. Buteyko. He's a Russian doctor from years ago. He went through a lot of controversy. He was shut down. His studies got torn apart, but he did a lot of amazing studies, and it made him a household name in Russia. And actually, a lot of doctors and clinics in Russia use these techniques. And he's the one who showed a lot of the problem was hyperventilation and why slow breathing is the way forward. But it then got forgotten about. We live in a crazy world right now where the powers that be don't want us to be healthy. They don't want us to be our best. They want us to stay submissive slaves. That's what it feels like. And it's becoming more and more apparent.
Mm-hmm.
But what's happening is, more and more people are waking up and realizing that doctors do not have all the answers at all. So more and more people are actually going to people who are learning and training, and we have many instructors who are training in these techniques and are coming in their droves because they're getting the results, right? So that means more doctors are coming to us as well and retraining. So there is an awakening going on, but all of the studies are already out there. The science is out there. It's all out there. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. All of these studies have been done before. Even in in fact, there's a whole field of science and a therapy called intermittent hypoxic training, or IHHT, intermittent hypoxic training, okay, or therapy. And what this is they use machines where you breathe in higher than normal oxygen for a period. Well, you breathe in very low oxygen.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like holding your breath, right? But you're breathing very low oxygen. And what it does is it simulates going up to high altitude. What they found was that people go to high altitude and come back down, they feel benefits, they feel better. This is because they're holding their breath for a short period of time. It's like holding their breath for a short period of time. It's like lowering the oxygen for a period. And what that does, that climatization, which we can invoke with our breath, but they do it through machines, but then mountaineers do it through climbing up mountains. What it does is it makes your body go, oh, I'm running out of oxygen, so I need to prepare. So what it does is it produces more red blood cells. It produces better capillarization and blood circulation. And what it also does is it increases blood flow to organs that need more oxygen, like the brain and the heart. And because of that, then you become more adapted to oxygen. So you need less oxygen. And that means the less you need to breathe, the longer you live, the better your health. The other thing is like carbon dioxide is such an important gas. This is something that we need to really understand. There's a paradox with oxygen. We think that oxygen is this thing that we must need. Yeah, we do need it, but we need it in the body tissue, not stuck to our red blood cells. We need it in the actual cells of our body. But carbon dioxide is essential. It's not a toxic waste gas. It's essential for getting oxygen into our cells.
Right. For what you said earlier, that it's because of the high concentration of carbon dioxide in certain parts of our body that the blood cells know where to drop off the oxygen. If it weren't for that signal, they wouldn't know.
Exactly. And carbon dioxide tolerance is what we need to train for. So the carbon dioxide, as I said, is what tells your brain you need to breathe again. The more you can train for carbon dioxide tolerance, that means you can handle larger amounts of carbon dioxide in the body. And that means, because carbon dioxide is a vasodilator, it's a bronchodilator, you get less inflammation, you get expansion, right? You're more relaxed and your blood vessels stay dilated rather than constricting. And that means your blood pressure is better. And oxygen causes vasoconstriction. It makes your blood vessels narrow. Carbon dioxide makes them dilate. So basically, what's the number one killer in the world today?
Heart disease.
Heart disease. What causes heart disease actually is the wear and tear of your arteries because of vasoconstriction, high blood pressure, right? That's really the main cause of heart disease.
But Niraj, what if someone said, oh, I don't want to train with all this. I just want to take my blood pressure meds. And, this training sounds too hard. I'd rather just stick with pharmaceuticals. You, as a former pharmacist, what would you tell them?
Firstly, I'm not going to slam medications and people that are on them and want to take them. Nothing against them, because there's a time and place and they can help emerging situations. They can also help people who can't do these techniques. Some people just can't do them. They may be in a wheelchair, disabled, they may have issues, other issues, so some people have breathing issues which are so severe, they might need some medication. So Medicines are there for emergency situation. They save lives. They can be great. But when they're overprescribed, we get a problem. And here's the problem. The problem with drugs is that they're based on reductionist science, which means you alter one thing in your body, and the idea is that by altering that one thing, you cure the issue. That's not how the body works. The body has got so many different factors going on, so many different components, and we aren't linear, as in you can't alter one thing here and change a complete person's state, right? We are very unlinear. We're emotional, we're irrational, we have all these different issues going on. So, but the problem with medication is that it's based on a linear reductionist model of reality, which is not what humans fit into at all. And this is actually the problem with the whole world now, because this is the old model which needs to be changed to the new model. The old model, way before that, the old ancient model was that we're a holistic system. You're called holistic Hilda, and you understand that we're a holistic being that has many different components. So now reductionist science says that we're all averages. So when you go and get your blood pressure checked, right, they'll tell you your average should be 120/80. Okay. Now, if you go off, if you're a little bit high, they try and bring you to average. If you're a bit low, they try and bring you to average, right? Now, here's the problem with this. If you were to take everybody's blood pressure on the planet, you'll find that it's a bell-shaped curve where you get a bit of population coming towards this 120/80, but you get 25% of people on either side who are either high blood pressure or low blood pressure. And their high blood pressure is their normal, and their low blood pressure is that their normal. And when you try and correct them to the average, they get all these side effects and issues. So let me give you an example of this. Guess what Gandhi's blood pressure was?
I'm guessing it was really low.
Most people say that. And actually, it was 200/100. Okay? And how did Gandhi die?
I don't recall. Did somebody kill him?
He got shot in the head, yeah, when he was 80 odd. And when they did the post-mortem on his body, there was no sign of disease. His organs were functioning very perfectly. So he lived very healthily with very high blood pressure. So this is the problem with modern medicine, is that it puts everybody into averages. And we aren't like that. Humans aren't like that. So that's why you must have a holistic approach. That's why when you're training on these techniques that we teach, they are customized to the individual, because we give you the right practice for you based on your energy type. Because the Ayurvedic system is a holistic science. Ayurveda, which is what our foundation is based on, shows that we're all individual because we all have a unique energetic matrix or energetic constituent. And this gives us different characteristics from each other. But with a series of different questions, you can find out what your predominant energy type is. Through that, you can create a lifestyle plan for you. So our instructors, what they're designed to do is to create customized lifestyle programs based on the individual, not on the whole, on a group. And through that, you can tell somebody what diet they should have, what exercise they should follow, what breathing techniques will work for them. And we have one thing that is a metric that everybody should look into as a health goal, a way to measure their health, which is unique. It is not unique to everybody. This actually is relevant to, because, as I said before, your breath retention time is a measurement of longevity, your ability to hold your breath. So there's a test called the morning BHT, morning breath hold time. You do when you wake up. You breathe in through your nose, out through your nose. You don't do any techniques. You do it within the first 10 minutes of waking up. In through your nose, out through your nose, normal inhale, exhale. Hold your nose and hold your breath until you get that first big urge to breathe. But you shouldn't be gasping for air at the end of it. That means you've done it too long. But that time is your breath hold time. And here's a gauge for your health based on that. And it comes from Buteyko. If you can hold your breath for 30 seconds and longer, that means that you have good health. If you go beyond 40 seconds, 60 seconds above, you have extraordinary health, right? You're like a super yogi. If you can't hold it less than 20 seconds, so 20 to 30 is like the average, less than 20 seconds is a sign that maybe a disease that you're trying to fight, all right? Or you just have very bad breathing habits that need to be fixed. Or it could be a lifestyle thing, it could be a dietary thing, it could be one of the things you need to fix, right? It means your carbon dioxide tolerance isn't high. But less than 10 seconds means there's a disease. In 5 seconds, you're probably going to die. It's like near death, right? It means your body has no oxygen efficiency at all. So with that, you can diagnose using that test what somebody's health issues are. You can then do an Ayurvedic profiling. You can then find out their energy type, and then you can see which areas of their lifestyle need to rebalance. And we're all about bringing balance. Now, a drug can only bring balance to one metric in the body, like their blood pressure or serotonin levels or cholesterol, right? Now, problem with that is that if you really want to try and be intelligent with the drugs, you're going to need to take 50 of them plus to be able to correct all of the different crazy things that are going on in the body at any one time, to bring it to an average, which is not even really truly your average, might be something different. And then therefore you're like end up rattling full of pills, and then eventually it doesn't work anyway. And you end up taking more drugs for those side effects of those drugs. So, that's the problem with medication, is they're okay for acute issues. So like say you get an infection, say you got a bacterial infection, you can, use some like hardcore antibiotic or antiviral to cure it, especially if that infection's been manufactured by a human in a lab and has been leaked, right? then we really need something else, to solve it. But most viruses and most bacterial infections and things like that, we can actually solve through, natural means, through antivirals that exist in nature, like ginger, turmeric, hot water in itself. You sip hot water with lemon, which are both antivirals in its nature, just all day long. That raises the temperature of your back of your throat. And that in itself, by raising the temperature of your throat, kills viruses. Viruses hate heat, right? And they hate alkalinity, and they hate acid. They like a nice neutral pH like what we have. They don't like excess acid. They don't like excess alkalinity, And also nitric oxide is a powerful antiviral itself. So simple, like I'll give you another great testimonial. There was a guy who ended up in ICU with COVID, right? He had blood clots and all this stuff. And the doctor told him, you're going to die if you don't take all these meds. And this guy is a real crazy, like very, he runs a big media company actually. And he was like, no way am I going to take all that crap. I'm going to do it myself. And he called me up. I was like, dude, are you sure? I refused. And I said, well, try this one thing. I can't guarantee it, but just try it. And I taught him to just hum all the time. Just chant Om as many times as you can throughout the day, like long Oms, Om, over and over again. When you hum, you stimulate the paranoid cavities. This is where we produce nitric oxide. By humming Om, and the emphasis on the we produce 15 times the amount of nitric oxide that we normally would. As I said, antiviral, antibacterial, vasodilator, bronchodilator. And he just did that non-stop for like 3 days. I think he had a bit of the steroids, but the doctors basically said, look, if you don't take all these meds, they had a whole list of them, you're going to die in 2 days. That's what they said. And he freaked them all out. He baffled them all. He was out of hospital in 3 days. And he's fit, perfect health now. And he says it's because I hummed like a madman. They all thought I'd gone crazy. But look, the studies are out there. Don't take this as medical advice, but the studies are all out there. You can check this out for yourself. Back up, what I'm saying with doing your own research. But yeah, you can, and this is why Om is a sacred chant. All of the sacred chants and all of the yogic practices and all these things that have been mixed up with religion, right, were just things that helped people to have a better experience of life. The religion got in the way of all of it and made them mysterious, mystical, and then people got confused and went down rabbit holes and stuff. But ultimately, if you look at these traditional practices that are thousands of years old, they got evolved by humans having to fight with microbes and germs and bacteria and other humans and other hostile environments like extreme cold and heat. And through that, they intuitively figured out what was the best way to live to survive, right, in these intense environments. That's how you created yoga. That's how we got to yoga.
Right. There's an ancestral wisdom. And as you said earlier in the conversation, you're like, I don't know where they got this idea with the Pranayama, but it's like there is something beyond us that has imparted wisdom to traditional peoples that I'm grateful that you're keeping alive, because this show is called Wise Traditions. We're all about these techniques that aren't necessarily against any particular faith. Some people are afraid sometimes to try them because they have been classified a certain way. But the truth is, these tools can all be a part of healing and drawing everyone closer to whatever faith they have. So, Niraj, this has been super fascinating. And we're going to wrap up now with a question I often pose at the end. If the listener could just do one thing, just take one step to improve their health, where should they begin? What would you recommend?
Okay. Aside from checking out our website, courses, YouTube channel, Facebook groups, and all that stuff, the first thing that everybody must start doing from the moment they leave this is to focus on nasal breathing, right? As I said, all these reasons why nasal breathing is so important, and be mindful of, always breathing through your mouth. Now, if you're somebody who already breathes through their nose, right, the first easy way to start training for oxygen efficiency, okay, and this is a great morning exercise because it also gets your bowels moving. It can cure constipation in itself and blocks everything, actually. If you've got congestion when you wake up, a lot of people get congestion at night, because of the air quality or wherever. This is a very simple, easy technique. Basically, breathe in through your nose. So stand up, breathe in through your nose, out through your nose, hold your nose, and just walk around the room until your face starts to flush a bit. Then breathe in again through your nose, out through your nose, do it again. And keep doing it for about 5 minutes. And everything will unblock. You'll get mental clarity, you'll wake up, and your bowels will just want to empty. You'll go to the toilet, and you'll be like, wow, boom, I'm ready to start the day. So that's one very simple method, because what that does is it raises carbon dioxide, nitric oxide, and it dilates all your blood vessels. It gets blood flow moving. It clears congestion, clears the mucus, and also improves movement of the bowels. So you need to go to the toilet, cleanses your bowels. But one of the big issues people have with well-being is actually the bowels not being clean, cleansed, and they get constipation. Constipation causes all kinds of issues, from anxiety to depression, and all this, and makes people angry and ratty as well. Can't think straight. So just doing this in the morning can solve a lot of these issues.
Wow. Well, I can tell you for sure, no one has ever given us that response to that final question. So thank you. Thank you so much, Niraj. Seriously, this has been a very fascinating conversation, and I'm sure it's going to prove to be useful to a lot of our listeners. Thanks again.
No worries. It's an absolute pleasure. Thank you.
Our guest today was Niraj Naik. His website is somabreath.com. And I'm Hilda Labrada-Gore, the host and producer of this podcast for the Weston A. Price Foundation. You can find me at holistichilda.com. And for the transcript for today's episode, visit our website, westonaprice.org, and click on the podcast page. And now for a recent letter to the editor from a journal. Empowering information. Cod liver oil, coconut oil, beef tallow, beef liver, chicken heart. All of these and more have been a part of my life for over 10 years thanks to WAPF. Homeopathy, vaccines, and the Bates method. Thanks to the foundation, I have learned a lot about these in 2021. When I first learned about the foundation in late 2008, it was from a friend I met at work by word of mouth. I do not follow the Weston A. Price Foundation via social media. I prefer to read, watch, and listen directly via the website. The Weston A. Price Foundation website and the Wise Traditions podcast are a goldmine of empowering information. As a member, I appreciate being able to download the journal PDFs when logged in via my account and view journal PDFs links, instead of having the journal sent via postal mail. Keep up the good work. This is from an anonymous member in Germany. Thank you so much for your encouraging words. Honestly, this really puts the wind in our sails. We work hard here, and it makes a difference to hear from you. So feel free to write us a letter to the editor as well, or to post a rating and review on Apple Podcasts. It really does mean a lot. And thank you for listening. Stay well, my friend. All shall be well, and all shall be well, and all manner of things shall be well.
On behalf of the Weston A. Price Foundation, thanks for listening. We have many free resources to support you on your health journey. Visit westonaprice.org to find podcasts, articles, videos, and more. You can also find a local chapter near you for help in finding sources of great food. We invite you to support the Foundation's mission of education, research, and activism by becoming a member. Thanks again, and take care. Wise Traditions is a project of the Weston A. Price Foundation for wise traditions in food, farming, and the healing arts. The content on this podcast is provided for informational purposes only and is not intended to substitute for the advice provided by your doctor or other healthcare professional. It is not intended to be, nor does it constitute healthcare or medical advice.